Hello, my fellow scholars. I hope you have all had a good week, as the sun has been staying out much longer. It's been real nice. I can tell you that it's definitely brightened up my days, and I can't wait for the clocks to move forward this weekend. We'll get some time back to our day to have some fun in the sun. Really looking forward to it myself. So, my speech for this presentation will be centered around the harassments and threats that face the LGBTQ community that includes but is not limited to physical threats, discrimination, and social isolation. I'm sure that we have all either seen or heard of events that have made a queer individual feel threatened or uncomfortable. For example, the Human Rights Campaign, an organization that advocates for the ending of discrimination and was established more than 40 years ago, has identified at least 32 transgender and gender expansive people whose lives have been taken by violent means, including even gun violence as well. They have also reported that over 80 bills were introduced last year that were specifically designed to discriminate against the LGBTQ community. The American Civil Liberties Union has identified over 500 of these bills last year. It is honestly crazy how much these legislation and bills have been increasing over the past couple of years. So, the content of these bills can vary, but for the most part, they limit access to school sports, restrooms, locker rooms, and even gender affirming medical care. So, with all that being said, an event transpired right next to where I work back in July of last year that is just one of the 141 protests against significant threats that were found by the GLAAD, which stands for the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, during 2023. On June 21st, 2023, as reported by NBC News, a group of neo Nazis disrupted a drag story hour in my state of New Hampshire. For those who do not know what a drag story hour is, it is a meeting, usually in a library or other public setting, in which drag queens read books to children. A drag queen is a man who adopts a flamboyant or feminine persona with glamorous or exaggerated costumes and makeup. This definition is right from Google. You can look it up, and that's essentially where I pulled that from. These people are typically homosexual and thus a part of the queer community and the unfortunate rising violence against them. So they're going to be a target as that in that as well. Uh, these groups, these neo Nazis, view them the same ways that they view Jews, people of color, and the rest of the LGBTQ community as a whole. Anyone who does not fit into a very strict box is going to be the target of harassment from hateful people, such as the ones who banged on the windows of the coffee shop that was hosting the story hour, performed Nazi salutes, and even shouted vulgarities during the event. Think of the typical schoolyard insults that you hear. That's what they were doing right in public. I believe that we should all be aware of the harassments and threats that face the queer community because I believe that it will not end there. I feel that the LGBTQ community is an easy target for groups such as the neo Nazis because it's a very small group, so not a lot of us can relate to them, in our own personal lives. Um, but the hatred will not just be limited to them. It will eventually expand to include the rest of our marginalized communities as well. If we as a society allow queers to come under attack, who's to say that they will stop there? It has been but a single century since the 19th Amendment was passed, and only a half century since the Civil Rights Act, and it would not be out of this world for these significant advances in human rights to be reversed if we allow for the hatred of racial and social minorities and women to continue unabated. With that being said, I would love to discuss how we can push back against these anti LGBTQ attacks that have been occurring in rapid numbers throughout the past few years. I found an article written by Allison Hope at CNN that describes 5 different ways just to accomplish that. She first says, and I quote, that we need to be an active upstander, which means we need to call out microaggressions or subtle misconceptions in real time when they are uttered, in order to help create an environment where injustice gets checked and people are more aware of how their actions and words have the power to demean or further justice and equity. That's what she said, so that's the first method we can employ to help combat this. The second method she recommends is to take to the streets. She says that we need to make noise, generate media headlines, and show solidarity. Protesting legally is a fantastic way to do this, whether it be at your local city hall or Washington, D.C. Third, Allison says that we need to lobby as hard as possible, which means calling your local representatives, writing them letters, and even visiting them in person, if applicable, of course, and to let them know about what you have to say and try and make a case for how the harassment of the queer community harms people, economies, and communities as a whole. Next, we need to commit to learning and teaching knowledge of the LGBTQ community in order to combat misinformation and ignorance. Finally, Miss Hope implores us all to recognize that queer people's LGBTQ identity may not be the most prominent or important part of their persona. And it doesn't take up their whole identity. They have personal hobbies just like you and I. They ride the slopes, they do everything that we do. It's not necessarily the biggest part of their identity. So, I hope that watching this video, you all can feel like you can take away something from this, something you may have not known before. I really wish that after watching this, you become an active upstander, and that we are all advocating for the right to decency of your fellow man. It is simply not okay to make physical threats to anyone, regardless of what you or I might think of them. It is important to stay a civilized society while in order to stay a civilized society, well, we need to act civilized. Please feel free to leave any comments or questions for me below, and I will answer them as soon as possible. But, besides the point, have a fantastic weekend, everyone, and look forward to watching your videos myself. Bye.